I was reviewing quarterly reports in my Denver office when my phone buzzed. Dad's name appeared on the screen with a message that made my blood run cold. "We're selling the house tomorrow. Your stuff will be on the curb." I stared at the words, remembering my childhood bedroom filled with baseball trophies, old textbooks, and family photos. My hands trembled as I typed back, "Okay." What Robert didn't know was that Id secretly purchased our family home 3 years ago through my consulting company. The drive from my downtown Denver office to my childhood home in Colorado Springs felt like traveling through time. Every mile brought back memories I'd tried to bury since my last argument with Dad 3 years ago. The familiar suburban streets looked the same, but something felt different as I pulled into the driveway of the modest ranch house where I'd grown up. I still had my key from high school, hidden behind the fake rock near the front garden. Dad never changed the locks, probably never even thought about it. The house was dark except for the flickering blue light from the television in the living room. I slipped inside quietly, my feet automatically avoiding the creaky floorboard near the kitchen entrance. What I found inside broke my heart in ways I hadn't expected. The dining room table was covered with stacks of papers, and as I got closer, I could see they were bills. Not just current bills, but notices stamped with red ink, final warnings, and what looked like foreclosure documents dating back 4 years. The familiar smell of my mother's vanilla candles was now mixed with the musty odor of stress and desperation. I heard movement from the kitchen and froze. Mom appeared in the doorway, wearing a uniform I didn't recognize with Clean Pro Services embroidered on the chest. Her hair, once perfectly styled for her job at the bank, was now pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her hands looked rough and red. "Nicholas," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock. "What are you doing here?" "Mom, I got Dad's text about selling the house. I came to get my things." I gestured toward the papers. "What's all this?" Janet's composure crumbled instantly. She sank into one of the dining room chairs and buried her face in her hands. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry you have to see this. Your father, She looked up at me with tears streaming down her cheeks. "He made me promise not to tell anyone, especially you." "Tell me what?" The story that came out over the next hour shattered everything I thought I knew about my family's situation. For the past 5 years, Dad had been gambling away their savings at Cherokee Casino, making the hour-long drive every weekend, and sometimes during his lunch breaks. What started as occasional poker games with his electrician buddies had escalated into a full-blown addiction that consumed every spare dollar they had. "I didn't know at first," Mom explained, wrapping her sweater tighter around her shoulders. "Robert told me he was working overtime, picking up extra jobs. The money was still coming in regularly, so I didn't question it. But then I started noticing things. She told me how Dad's paychecks seemed to disappear faster than they should, how he became secretive about his phone and computer, how he started picking fights about money when they'd never had those arguments before. When she finally confronted him, she discovered not only the gambling, but also that He'd been lying about work, far from picking up overtime. He'd actually been demoted from senior electrician back to regular crew after showing up late and distracted too many times. Has been telling everyone at church, your Aunt Linda, even the neighbors, that he got a promotion," Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He bought all these expensive tools and a new work jacket to make it look real. Meanwhile, I've been working 3 different jobs just to keep the lights on." I looked around the house with new eyes and saw what I'd missed during my brief, angry visit 3 years ago. The living room was filled with items that seemed out of place for a family struggling financially. A massive flat-screen television, expensive leather recliners, a new sound system, Dad's attempts to maintain appearances even as their world fell apart. Mom's 3 jobs explained her uniform. Clean Pro Services was an office cleaning company where she worked nights after her day job at the grocery store. Her third job was weekend data entry for a tax preparation company. Work she did from home on the computer ID bought them for Christmas years ago. I begged him to let me talk to you, she continued. When he lost his truck to repossession last month, I wanted to call you for help, but he said you'd already made it clear you didn't want anything to do with us after what happened with Amanda. Amanda, my younger sister who'd moved to California after our explosive argument about money. The one who'd convinced our parents I was too selfish and successful to care about family problems. Mom, I tried to call. I sent letters. I even drove by the house twice, but Dad told me you both were doing fine and didn't want to see me. He never told me about any calls or letters. Janet looked genuinely surprised. Robert said you were too busy with your fancy business to bother with us anymore. The pieces were starting to fit together, and the picture they formed made me sick to my stomach. Dad's pride had been slowly destroying the family, one lie at a time. He'd rather lose everything than admit he needed help, rather gamble away their future than face the truth about his failures. The house sale tomorrow, I said carefully. Is that through the bank? Mom nodded miserably. Foreclosure. We're 6 months behind on payments. The bank has been patient, but they can't wait anymore. Robert thinks if we sell to this real estate agent quickly, we might be able to pay off most of the debt and still have a little money left for a small apartment. My heart was pounding. The foreclosure that was supposed to happen tomorrow was the same one Id prevented 3 years ago when Id quietly purchased the house through my consulting company, Pinnacle Solutions, LLC. It'd been making the mortgage payments directly to the bank ever since, but Id structured the deal so my parents could continue living there without knowing about the change in ownership. I'd wanted to protect them while preserving their dignity. This real estate agent, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What's his name? Garrett something. Garrett Sullivan, I think. He seemed really nice, very understanding about our situation. He said he could get us a quick sale and we wouldn't have to worry about showings or inspections or any of that complicated stuff. Garrett Sullivan. The name hit me like a physical blow. Garrett had been my roommate during my junior year at University of Colorado. We'd lived together in a cramped off-campus apartment, splitting rent and groceries, studying for business classes together. It even lent him money for textbooks when his financial aid fell through. Mom, I need you to promise me something. Don't sign any papers tomorrow until I can be here, okay? Nicholas, your father won't want you involved in this. He's so ashamed, and his pride. His pride is going to destroy what's left of this family. I reached across the table and took her work-roughened hands in mine. Please, just give me 24 hours to figure this out. She nodded reluctantly, and I kissed her forehead before heading back to my car. As I drove home through the dark Colorado night, my mind was racing. Garrett Sullivan showing up to handle my family's foreclosure couldn't be a coincidence. There were hundreds of real estate agents in the Colorado Springs area. The odds of my old college roommate randomly being assigned to this case were astronomical. Something was very, very wrong. I barely slept that night, my mind churning with questions about Garrett's involvement in my family's crisis. At 5 a.m, I gave up on rest and drove back to Colorado Springs, parking down the street from my childhood home where I could observe without being seen. At exactly 9 o'clock, a silver Mercedes sedan pulled into the driveway. The man who stepped out looked like an older, more polished version of the Garrett Sullivan I remembered from college. Gone were the thrift store clothes and perpetually messy hair. This Garrett wore an expensive suit, carried a leather briefcase, and moved with the confidence of someone who'd found success. But it was definitely him. Same crooked smile, same way of adjusting his tie when he was about to say something he wasn't sure about. I watched through binoculars Id bought at a sporting goods store on my way over as he rang the doorbell and greeted my parents with what appeared to be genuine warmth. I had to get closer to hear what was being said, so I approached the house from the backyard, staying low near the fence line. The kitchen window was cracked open, and if I positioned myself just right near Mom's rose bushes, I could make out most of the conversation. "Now, Robert, Janet, I know this is difficult," Garrett was saying in a voice that oozed false sympathy, "but I've got great news. My buyer is prepared to close today with cash. No inspections, no appraisals, no waiting for mortgage approvals. You could have money in your account by this afternoon." "That seems fast," I heard Mom say hesitantly. "Are you sure about the price?" "150,000 seems." "Mom, I understand it might seem low, but you have to consider the current market conditions. Interest rates are killing buyer demand, and frankly, this house needs significant work to compete with newer properties in the area." I nearly stood up and revealed myself right then. 150,000? Eid had the house appraised 2 years ago for insurance purposes, and it was worth at least 400,000, possibly more with the improvements Dad had made to the basement and the new roof they'd put on before their financial troubles began. Garrett continued his pitch. "I've brought comparable sales from the neighborhood over the past 6 months. I heard papers rustling. As you can see, similar homes are selling well below asking price. The market is just tough right now." From my position in the bushes, I couldn't see the documents he was showing them, but I was willing to bet they were either completely fabricated or cherry-picked examples of distressed sales that weren't truly comparable to my family's property. "What about the family down the street?" Dad asked. "The Hendersons sold their place last month for over 300,000. Different situation entirely," Garrett replied smoothly. "Theirs was completely renovated, staged professionally, had that big addition in the back. Plus, they weren't facing foreclosure pressure. When you're selling under distress, you have to adjust expectations." I pulled out my phone and started recording. Even if the audio quality wasn't perfect, I needed to document this conversation. "The most important thing," Garrett continued, "is that you avoid having the foreclosure show up on your credit reports. My buyer is willing to overlook the cosmetic issues and take the property as is. If we wait and try to list it traditionally, you're looking at months on the market, during which time the bank will complete the foreclosure process. We just want to get out from under this debt," Dad said, and I could hear the defeat in his voice. "If your buyer can close quickly and pay enough to cover what we owe the bank, maybe we can start over somewhere smaller." "Absolutely. My buyer understands your situation and wants to help." Garrett's phone rang, and he excused himself to take the call outside. I had to scramble to a new position to keep listening, moving behind Dad's old workshop in the garage. "Yeah, it's going exactly as planned," Garrett said, once he was alone in the front yard. "They're desperate and grateful for any option. I've got them convinced the house is worth half its actual value." My blood went cold. He was talking to someone about manipulating my parents. No, they have no idea about the real market value. I showed them fake comparables from a completely different neighborhood. Garrett laughed, and the sound made my stomach turn. "These old folks are so easy to fool. They just want someone to make their problems go away. Listen, Brad, once I buy this place through Mountain View Properties, we can flip it within 6 months for $350. Maybe $400 if we do some basic cosmetic updates." "Brad," Garrett was talking to a business partner about buying my family's house for $150 and immediately reselling it for more than double. This wasn't just a questionable real estate deal. It was deliberate fraud. Trust me. I've been cultivating this opportunity for months. The old man has a gambling problem, and I may have helped introduce him to some higher stakes games to speed up the timeline." I almost dropped my phone. Garrett hadn't just stumbled into this situation. He had been actively working to make it worse. The beauty is that they're so ashamed of their financial problems, they haven't told anyone else about the sale. No family members asking questions, no second opinions on the price. It's perfect, perfect for him, maybe. But Garrett had made one critical miscalculation. He had no idea that the family member asking questions was already here, that I'd been watching and listening, and that I owned the house he was planning to steal. Garrett finished his call and went back inside to continue pressuring my parents. I stayed hidden, my mind racing with what I'd just learned. This wasn't just about money anymore. Garrett had been deliberately targeting my family, using Dad's gambling addiction as a weapon to force them into financial desperation. When Garrett finally left, promising to return in 2 hours with the final paperwork, I waited until his Mercedes was completely out of sight before approaching the house. Dad answered the door, looking surprised to see me. "Nicholas, what are you doing here? I thought you were coming to get your things later." "Dad, we need to talk. All of us." I spent the next hour explaining what I'd overheard, without revealing that I already owned the house. I showed them the recording on my phone, watched their faces change from confusion to shock to outrage as they realized how badly they were being manipulated. But he seemed so nice. Mom kept saying, "He brought us flowers last week when he heard about Robert's heart problems." Heart problems? This was the first I'd heard about Dad having health issues. "What heart problems?" Dad waved dismissively. "Just some palpitations, probably stress-related. Been to the emergency room a few times when they got really bad, but the doctors say my heart looks fine. Probably just too much coffee and worry." Something about this didn't feel right either, but I filed it away for later investigation. Right now, I needed to focus on protecting my parents from Garrett's fraud. "Dad, I need you to trust me on this. Don't sign anything today. Give me 48 hours to find out what's really going on." "Nicholas, we don't have 48 hours. The bank will wait. I guarantee it." I couldn't tell them why I was so confident about that. Not yet. But I could see Garrett's silver Mercedes turning back onto our street in the distance. "I have to go, but promise me you won't sign anything until we talk again." Dad looked like he wanted to argue, but Mom put her hand on his arm. "Robert, what if Nicholas is right? What if we're making a mistake?" As I drove away, I could see Garrett pulling back into the driveway. But now I knew what he was really after, and I had a plan to stop him. What I didn't know yet was just how deep this conspiracy went, or how close to home the betrayal would strike. I followed Garrett's Mercedes at a safe distance as he left my parents' house, curious to see where he would go next. Instead of heading toward downtown Colorado Springs, where most real estate offices were located, he drove to a small coffee shop in a strip mall on the south side of town. I parked across the street and watched as Garrett walked inside. Through the large windows, I could see him scanning the room before walking toward a corner booth. That's when I saw someone stand up to greet him, and my world tilted on its axis. Amanda, my younger sister who supposedly lived in California, who hadn't spoken to any of us in 5 years except for angry phone calls demanding money. Amanda, who had convinced our parents that I was too selfish and successful to care about family problems. I sat in my car, staring at them through the coffee shop window, trying to process what I was seeing. Amanda looked different from the last time I'd seen her. Her once long blonde hair was now cut in a severe bob and dyed brown. She was thinner, wearing clothes that looked expensive but somehow desperate at the same time. I needed to hear what they were saying, but I couldn't exactly walk into the coffee shop without being seen. Instead, I drove to an electronics store and bought a small digital recorder with a sensitive microphone, the kind private investigators use for surveillance. It cost me $300, but I had a feeling I was going to need proof of whatever was happening in that coffee shop. When I got back 20 minutes later, they were still talking, their heads bent close together over what looked like documents spread across the table. I managed to get a table outside on the patio close enough to the window that my recording device might pick up their conversation if they were talking loudly enough. The first clear words I heard were Amanda's. Been working on this for over 2 years. Every detail has been planned. 2 years. Amanda had been planning something involving our family for 2 years. The timing is perfect, Garrett was saying. Your father's gambling has accelerated exactly as we predicted. The medical bills from his heart episodes have pushed them right to the edge. Medical bills, heart episodes, plural. Dad had downplayed his health problems, but apparently they were more serious than Head let on. I've been encouraging him through those casino promotions, Amanda said, and I had to strain to hear her voice. Created fake social media accounts that send him notifications about poker tournaments and special weekend deals. He has no idea they're coming from me. My sister had been deliberately feeding our father's gambling addiction. I felt sick. The beauty of it is that he thinks he's just unlucky, Amanda continued. He has no idea that I've been tracking his patterns, knowing exactly when He'd be most vulnerable to bigger bets and riskier games. And the parents don't suspect anything. Nothing. As far as they know, him struggling financially in California with 3 kids and a husband who lost his construction job. They feel sorry for me. Amanda's laugh was cold and calculating. Robert actually sent me $2,000 last Christmas because he felt guilty that his successful daughter was doing better than his struggling daughter, Nicholas. She was talking about me. Our parents thought I was the successful one who didn't care, while Amanda played the role of the struggling single mother who deserved their sympathy and support. What about the brother? Garrett asked. Any chance he'll interfere? Nicholas, please. I made sure that bridge was burned years ago. After I asked him for money and he refused, I convinced Mom and Dad that he said some terrible things about them being financial failures. They haven't talked to him in 3 years, and they're too proud to reach out now. The recording device felt hot in my hands. Amanda had orchestrated the estrangement between me and our parents. Everything Id believed about our family falling apart was a lie Shed carefully constructed. Plus, he's busy with his fancy consulting business in Denver. Even if he wanted to help, he probably doesn't know how bad things have gotten. I've been intercepting his phone calls and emails for months. Intercepting my communications. No wonder my attempts to reconcile with our parents had gone nowhere. So, what's the timeline from here? Amanda asked. I'm going back this afternoon to get their signatures on the sale documents. My shell company, Mountain View Properties, will buy the house for $150. I've already lined up a contractor who can do cosmetic updates for $20,000. We put it back on the market in 60 days for $400,000. And my cut, half the profit, just like we agreed. That's about $125,000. Minus expenses, $125,000. Amanda was willing to financially destroy our parents for $125,000. It's not just about the money, Amanda said, as if reading my thoughts. This house represents everything that was wrong with our family. Mom and Dad always loved Nicholas more because he was the successful one, the one who went to college, the one who started his own business. They never appreciated what I contributed. What did you contribute? Garrett asked, sounding genuinely curious. I took care of them emotionally. I was the one who listened to their problems, who called every week, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries. But when it came time to help Nicholas with college expenses or his business startup costs, suddenly there was always money available. When I needed help, there were always excuses. I remembered it differently. I remembered Amanda constantly asking for money throughout her 20s, always with dramatic stories about emergencies that seemed to happen suspiciously often. I remembered our parents expressing frustration about her financial irresponsibility but feeling guilty about not helping more. The house is like their shrine to Nicholas' success, Amanda continued. His bedroom is still exactly the same as when he left for college. All his trophies and awards on display, his college graduation photos on the mantel. Meanwhile, my kids have never even seen their grandparents' house because I live too far away for regular visits. So this is revenge. This is justice. They're going to lose the house anyway because of Dad's gambling. At least this way, someone in the family benefits from the situation instead of just letting the bank take everything. Someone in the family. Amanda was destroying our parents financially and calling it a family benefit. "There's just one more thing we need to take care of," Amanda said, lowering her voice so much that I had to hold my breath to hear her through the recording device. "The power of attorney issue." What power of attorney? During Dad's last heart episode, when he was in the emergency room, I had Mom sign a medical power of attorney, giving me authority to make decisions if there's another health crisis. But I may have expanded the scope of that document slightly. Meaning I now have legal authority to make financial decisions for both parents during any medical emergency. And if Dad has another heart episode, which he will, how can you be so sure? Amanda smiled in a way that made my blood run cold, because I've been very carefully managing his caffeine intake during my phone calls home. A few extra energy pills dissolved in his morning coffee, combined with the stress of the foreclosure, should trigger another episode right around the time you need those documents signed. She was poisoning our father. My sister was literally poisoning our father to trigger medical emergencies that would give her legal power to steal their house. I had heard enough. I had more than enough evidence to stop this scheme and probably send both of them to prison. But as I sat there, listening to them plan the destruction of our family, I realized that just stopping them wasn't enough. They had hurt my parents, manipulated my father's addiction, isolated me from my family, and now planned to poison Dad to complete their theft. Simply preventing the house sale wouldn't repair the damage they'd already done or ensure they faced consequences for their actions. I needed a better plan. I needed to not just stop them, but to make sure they faced justice while protecting my parents from any further harm. And I was starting to get an idea about how to do exactly that. That evening, I drove back to my apartment in Denver with my head spinning from what Eid discovered. Amanda and Garrett weren't just planning to steal my parents' house. They were willing to physically harm my father to do it. The recording Id made was damning, but I needed more evidence to build a case that would stick in court. I spent the night researching everything I could find about caffeine poisoning, medical power of attorney laws in Colorado, and real estate fraud. By morning, I had a plan, but it was going to require help from professionals. The first person I called was Marcus Thompson, a private investigator Id worked with on some corporate consulting cases. Marcus was a former Denver police detective who specialized in financial crimes and family fraud cases. "Nicholas, good to hear from you," Marcus said when I reached him. "What can I do for you?" "I need help exposing a conspiracy to defraud my elderly parents out of their house, and it involves medical manipulation that could seriously hurt my father." That got my attention. "How serious are we talking?" I played him the recording from the coffee shop and explained everything Eid discovered over the past 2 days. Marcus listened without interruption, but I could hear him taking notes. "This is much bigger than simple real estate fraud," he said when I finished. "If your sister is deliberately causing your father's heart problems, we're looking at aggravated assault, elder abuse, identity theft, and conspiracy charges. But we need more evidence than just the recording." "What kind of evidence?" "Medical records showing the caffeine levels in your father's system during his ER visits. Documentation of the fake power of attorney. Proof that your sister has been impersonating your mother for financial transactions. Evidence of the fake real estate comparables. How do we get all that? Carefully and legally. The good news is that your father's medical records should show elevated caffeine if your sister has been poisoning him. The bad news is that we need his permission to access those records." I thought about this. I might be able to get that permission, but I can't tell him why I need it yet. He's already ashamed about the gambling and the financial problems. If he finds out his own daughter has been poisoning him, it could trigger a heart episode for real. Marcus finished. Okay, let's approach this differently. Do you have any legal authority regarding your parents' affairs? Actually, yes. They signed a general power of attorney 3 years ago when Dad had minor surgery. I think they forgot about it. But it should still be valid. Perfect. That gives us legal access to their medical and financial records. I can start pulling information today. But Nicholas, there's something else we need to discuss. What's that? Your sister mentioned creating fake social media accounts and intercepting your communications with your parents. That suggests she's been running a sophisticated manipulation campaign for years. People who do this level of psychological manipulation don't usually stop at one victim family. The implication hit me like a cold wave. You think she's done this before? I think we need to find out. If your sister has been systematically defrauding elderly family members, there might be other victims. Other families who've lost their homes or savings to her schemes. I gave Marcus permission to investigate Amanda's background and financial history. Within 6 hours, he called me back with information that made my stomach turn. Nicholas, you need to sit down for this, Marcus said. Your sister has been very busy over the past 5 years. Amanda hadn't just been struggling financially in California, as Shed claimed. She'd been running a network of elder fraud schemes, targeting families across 3 states. Marcus had found evidence linking her to at least 4 other cases where elderly homeowners had been manipulated into selling their properties for far below market value. She's been using different aliases, different stories, but the pattern is always the same, Marcus explained. She identifies families with elderly homeowners facing financial stress, usually through public records of foreclosure filings or medical debt. Then she creates fake social media profiles to build relationships with family members, looking for ways to isolate the elderly victims from potential help. How is this even possible? She's very good at what she does. In 2 cases, she actually moved to the target city for several months, got involved in church groups and community organizations where the victims were members. She built genuine relationships with these people before exploiting them. The case files Marcus shared with me were devastating. An 80-year-old widower in Phoenix who lost his house after Amanda convinced him his own son was trying to steal his inheritance. A retired couple in Utah who signed over their farm to escape debts that Amanda had helped create by encouraging the husband's gambling addiction through fake casino promotions. The pattern with your family is more sophisticated because she's actually related to the victims, Marcus continued. She's been playing a long game, using her real family connections to maximize the psychological manipulation. What about Garrett? Is he involved in the other cases? Some of them, has been her primary real estate contact for Colorado and Utah transactions. But she's worked with other agents in different states. This is an organized criminal enterprise, not just a desperate sister trying to get inheritance money early. That night, Marcus and I met with his contact at the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. Agent Sarah Chen listened to our evidence and agreed that Amanda's activities warranted federal investigation, especially given the multi-state nature of her crimes. The challenge, Agent Chen explained, is that we need to catch her in the act of current crimes, not just document past ones. If she's planning to poison your father and forge documents tomorrow, we need to be prepared to intervene. What does that mean? It means we're going to set up surveillance at your parents' house and document everything that happens when your sister and her partner attempt to complete this fraud. Agent Chen explained that they would position undercover agents in the neighborhood and monitor all phone communications. If Amanda attempted to poison my father or forge any documents, they would arrest her immediately. If she tried to proceed with the fraudulent house sale, they would let it get far enough to establish criminal intent before stopping it. What about my parents? I asked. They still don't know I own the house, and they definitely don't know about Amanda's other crimes. Well, protect them, Agent Chen assured me. But Nicholas, there's something you should know. Your parents may be in more danger than we initially realized. She showed me a file on one of Amanda's previous victims, an elderly man in New Mexico who had died of a heart attack during a confrontation with Amanda about missing money from his savings account. The death was ruled natural causes, but the timing was suspicious. If your sister is willing to poison your father to trigger medical emergencies, we can't rule out the possibility that she might escalate to more dangerous methods if her current plan fails. I spent that night in a hotel room near my parents' house, unable to sleep as I thought about everything that was about to happen. Tomorrow, I would watch my sister attempt to complete the destruction of our family, knowing that federal agents were recording every move. The sister I'd grown up with, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework, had become a predator who viewed our parents as nothing more than sources of money to be manipulated and discarded. But I also knew that tomorrow would be the day justice finally caught up with her, and our family could begin to heal from years of lies and manipulation. I just prayed that my father would be strong enough to survive what was about to be revealed. The next morning, Agent Chen called me at 6 a.m. with urgent news that would reshape everything I thought I knew about Amanda's crimes. Nicholas, we need to meet right now. Our financial investigators found something big overnight. I met her and Marcus at a Dennis restaurant 20 minutes from my parents' house, where Agent Chen spread out a stack of documents that made my blood run cold. Your sister hasn't just been planning this house theft for 2 years, she began. She's been systematically stealing your mother's identity for 18 months, and the scope of the theft is staggering. The documents showed a pattern of identity theft that was both sophisticated and heartless. Amanda had opened 17 different credit cards in our mother's name, taken out a home equity loan for $85,000, applied for Social Security benefits using Mom's information, and even received Medicare-covered medical treatments in California using Mom's insurance numbers. How is this possible? I asked, staring at credit card statements for accounts Mom had never opened. She lives in California. Technology, Agent Chen explained. Your sister has been using deepfake software to create video calls with bank representatives, impersonating your mother's voice and appearance well enough to pass verification procedures. She showed me screenshots from Amanda's computer that the FBI had obtained through a federal warrant. Amanda had created dozens of fake email accounts using variations of our mother's name, corresponding with financial institutions and always scheduling phone calls during times when she knew Mom would be at work. But here's the most disturbing part. Agent Chen continued. Your sister has been selling your parents' personal information to identity theft rings. Social Security numbers, medical records, daily routines, even photos from inside their house. Marcus handed me a printed email chain that showed Amanda negotiating prices for different types of personal information. Social Security numbers sold for $50 each. Complete medical histories with Medicare numbers brought $200. Detailed financial information, including bank account numbers and credit scores, sold for $500 per file. She's been treating your parents like a renewable resource, Marcus said grimly. Every few months, she'd compile updated information about their finances, health, and personal habits, then sell that data to criminal networks. How much money are we talking about? Based on what we've found so far, Amanda has stolen at least $250,000 using your parents' identities over the past 18 months, Agent Chen said. But she's also generated another $100,000 by selling their personal information to other criminals. $350,000. More than twice what Amanda and Garrett were planning to steal through the house sale. There's more, Agent Chen continued. We found evidence that your sister has been planning to disappear completely once this house sale goes through. She's already obtained fake identification documents for her entire family under new names. They were planning to move to Mexico within the week. She was going to abandon our parents to deal with all the identity theft debt. Worse than that, the criminals who bought your parents' information have been planning their own schemes. Your parents could have faced years of financial and legal problems from crimes committed in their names, while Amanda lived comfortably in another country with stolen money. I felt like I was going to be sick. The sister I'd grown up with had become something monstrous. A predator who viewed our family as nothing more than sources of money and information to be exploited. But the good news, Agent Chen said, is that all of this evidence makes our case against her much stronger. We're not just talking about house fraud anymore. Identity theft across state lines, financial fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit multiple felonies. Your sister is looking at decades in federal prison. What about Garrett? Hez involved in the house fraud and probably some of the identity theft, but Amanda is the mastermind. We've been monitoring his communications, and it's clear She's been manipulating him almost as much as She's been manipulating your parents. Agent Chen explained that Garrett genuinely believed he was just helping Amanda get her inheritance early from parents who were too proud to share their wealth with their struggling daughter. Amanda had been lying to him about our family's financial situation, claiming that our parents were secretly wealthy but refusing to help her with her children's medical expenses. Garrett thinks he's being noble, helping a struggling mother get access to money that should rightfully be hers anyway. Marcus added, Amanda told him that your parents have multiple investment accounts and substantial savings, but they're too greedy to help their own grandchildren. So Garrett doesn't know about the identity theft or the medical manipulation. No indication that he does. Amanda kept those activities separate from their real estate scheme. In her mind, the house fraud was just one component of a much larger operation. Agent Chen's phone buzzed with a message. Okay, it's time. Our surveillance team is in position around your parents' house. Amanda's car was spotted entering the neighborhood 15 minutes ago. She's early, probably planning to implement the caffeine poisoning before Garrett arrives for the document signing. What do? You stay here and let us handle this. We need to catch her in the act of attempting to poison your father, and your presence could complicate the situation. But what about my parents? They still don't know what's happening. Agent Martinez is dressed as a utility worker and will intervene the moment your sister does anything that could harm your father. Your parents' safety is our top priority. I spent the next 3 hours in that Dennis restaurant, drinking terrible coffee and watching live surveillance footage on Agent Chen's laptop. I could see my parents' house from multiple angles, agents positioned as joggers and maintenance workers throughout the neighborhood. At 11:30 a.m., I watched Amanda walk up to my parents' front door carrying a small paper bag and a coffee cup holder. Mom answered the door and hugged her, clearly surprised but delighted to see her daughter. Dad appeared and embraced Amanda as well, and I could see them talking animatedly on the front porch. The family reunion I was watching through surveillance cameras looked warm and loving. If I didn't know what Amanda was really planning, I would have thought it was beautiful to see my sister reconnecting with our parents after years of distance. But I did know what she was planning, and watching her hug the parents she intended to poison and rob made me feel physically ill. Audio coming online now, Agent Chen said, adjusting her headphones. Through the surveillance equipment, I could hear Amanda's voice, sweet and concerned. Dad, you look tired. I brought you that special coffee you used to love when I was growing up. Remember? From that little shop downtown? That's so thoughtful, sweetheart, Dad's voice replied. I was just telling your mother yesterday how much I missed talking to you. Amanda had brought poisoned coffee to the family home, planning to trigger a medical emergency that would give her legal authority to steal everything our parents owned, and she was doing it while telling them how much she loved them. The next few minutes would determine whether our family could be saved or destroyed forever. At exactly noon, I watched through surveillance cameras as Garrett's Mercedes pulled into my parents' driveway. Agent Chen confirmed that Amanda had successfully convinced Dad to drink the coffee Shed brought, which field tests showed contained enough caffeine to cause dangerous heart palpitations in someone his age. "We need to move now," Agent Chen said. "Your father just consumed a potentially lethal dose of caffeine, and we can't wait for symptoms to develop. I'm going in there." "Nicholas, that wasn't the plan. Agent Chen, with respect, my family has been manipulated and lied to for years. They deserve to hear the truth from someone they trust, not from federal agents they've never met." After a brief argument, Agent Chen agreed to let me approach the house first, with backup agents ready to intervene if the situation became dangerous. I drove to my parents' house with my hands shaking, knowing that the next hour would determine whether our family could survive the revelations that were about to unfold. I walked up to the front door and rang the doorbell. Mom answered, looking surprised to see me for the second time in 2 days. "Nicholas, what are you doing here?" "Mom, I need to talk to all of you. It's extremely important." I could hear voices from the living room. Amanda, Garrett, and Dad were apparently discussing the house sale documents. When I walked into the room, Amanda's face went white, but she recovered quickly. "Nicholas, what a surprise." "I was just telling Dad and Mom about my visit." She stood up and gave me a hug that felt cold despite her warm words. "Garrett was just explaining how the house sale will help Mom and Dad get back on their feet financially." Garrett looked confused. "I'm sorry. I don't think we've been introduced." "We have, actually. University of Colorado, junior year. You borrowed $300 from me for textbooks and never paid it back." The recognition dawned slowly across Garrett's face, followed immediately by fear as he realized what my presence meant. "Nicholas is our older son," Dad explained to Garrett, seemingly oblivious to the tension in the room. "We haven't seen much of him lately because he's been so busy with his successful business in Denver." "Dad, about that business," I said, pulling out my phone. "There's something I need to tell all of you. For the past 3 years, my company, Pinnacle Solutions LLC, has been making your mortgage payments." Silence filled the room. Even Amanda looked genuinely shocked. "What do you mean?" Mom asked. "I mean, I own this house. I bought it 3 years ago when you first started missing payments, but I structured the deal so you could continue living here with dignity. There is no foreclosure. There never was." I showed them the legal documents Id brought, proving that Pinnacle Solutions LLC held the deed to the house and had been making all mortgage payments to the bank for 36 months. "But the bank notices," Dad said weakly. "The foreclosure paperwork were all from before I bought the house, Dad. Every piece of paper Garrett showed you was either outdated or completely fabricated." Garrett started toward the door, but I stepped in front of him. "Stay right where you are. We're not finished." I turned to address the room. "Amanda, Garrett, for the past week, I've been recording your conversations and working with the FBI to document your fraud scheme." I played the recording from the coffee shop on my phone speaker. Amanda's voice filled the room. "I've been encouraging him through those casino promotions, created fake social media accounts that send him notifications about poker tournaments and special weekend deals." Dad's face went from confusion to horror as he realized what he was hearing. "The most important thing," Garrett's voice continued from the recording, "is that you avoid having the foreclosure show up on your credit reports." Mom sank into her chair. "Amanda, what is this?" I fast-forwarded to the part where Amanda discussed poisoning Dad's coffee. Her voice, cold and calculating, a few extra energy pills dissolved in his morning coffee, combined with the stress of the foreclosure, should trigger another episode right around the time you need those documents signed. "The coffee," Dad said, looking at the cup he'd been drinking from. "Amanda, what did you put in my coffee?" "Nothing harmful, Dad. Just a little extra caffeine to help you feel more alert for the meeting." "Amanda, I said, pulling out additional documents Marcus had provided. You've stolen over $250,000 using Mom's identity over the past 18 months. You've sold their personal information to criminal networks. And you've been planning to move to Mexico with your family using fake identification documents. The evidence was overwhelming. Credit card statements, fake email accounts, records of identity theft, communications with criminal networks. I spread it all across the coffee table, while Amanda sat in stunned silence. But the most important thing you should know, I continued, is that federal agents have been monitoring this entire conversation. Agent Chen, you can come in now. Agent Chen and 3 other agents entered the house, followed by Marcus Thompson. Amanda looked around the room like a trapped animal, finally realizing that her years of careful planning had collapsed in a single moment. Amanda Sullivan. Agent Chen said, "You're under arrest for identity theft, elder abuse, financial fraud, conspiracy, and attempted assault with a dangerous substance." "Wait," Garrett said, standing up shakily. "I didn't know about any identity theft or poisoning. Amanda told me the parents were wealthy but too stubborn to help their struggling daughter. She said this house sale was just getting her inheritance early." Agent Chen looked at him with something approaching sympathy. "Mr. Sullivan, you're also under arrest for real estate fraud and conspiracy, but we understand you may have been manipulated by Miss Sullivan as well. If you cooperate with our investigation, that will be taken into consideration." As federal agents read Amanda and Garrett their rights, I watched my parents struggle to process what they'd just learned. Years of lies and manipulation were unraveling before their eyes, and I could see the emotional weight of it crushing them. "Mom, Dad," I said gently, "I know this is overwhelming, but the most important thing is that you're safe now, and we can start rebuilding our family based on truth instead of lies." Dad was staring at Amanda as the agents prepared to take her away. "Sweetheart, why? We would have given you anything you needed. We would have helped you." Amanda finally looked directly at our father, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine remorse in her eyes. "I was so angry for so long," she said quietly. "Angry that Nicholas got all the opportunities, all the support, all the love. I wanted you to hurt the way I was hurting. But honey, we never loved Nicholas more than you." "Yes, you did. Maybe you didn't mean to, but you did, and I couldn't forgive that." As the agents led Amanda away, she looked back at me one last time. "I hope you're happy now, Nicholas. You get to be the hero who saved the family." "I'm not happy, Amanda. I'm heartbroken that it came to this." After they left, the house felt impossibly quiet. My parents sat together on their couch, holding hands and trying to make sense of everything that had happened. "Nicholas," Mom said finally, "you owned our house for 3 years and never told us. I wanted to protect you while preserving your dignity. I knew Dad would be too proud to accept direct help, so I found a way to help without you knowing." "But we could have lost our independence," Dad said. "What if you decided to sell it or kick us out?" I pulled out another document from my briefcase. "That's why I had my lawyer create this family trust agreement. The house belongs to the trust, and you have the right to live here for the rest of your lives. I can never take that away from you, even if I wanted to." It took several more hours to explain everything to my parents, to help them understand the scope of Amanda's crimes and the years of manipulation they'd endured. But as the afternoon turned to evening, I began to see something I hadn't seen in years: hope returning to their faces. The road to healing our family would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, we would be walking it together, without lies standing between us. 3 months after Amanda's arrest, our family gathered in the living room of the house I'd secretly protected for 3 years to discuss how we wanted to move forward together. The legal proceedings had moved swiftly. Amanda pleaded guilty to 12 federal charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 8 years in prison and an agreement to pay full restitution to her victims across multiple states. Garrett received 3 years probation and community service after cooperating fully with investigators and providing evidence that led to the arrests of several other individuals involved in elder fraud schemes. The identity theft charges had been the most serious. Amanda had stolen over $300,000 from our parents and other victims, money that would take years to recover, even with court-ordered restitution. But more devastating than the financial theft was learning about the psychological manipulation Shed employed against our family. "I still can't believe she was intercepting our phone calls," Mom said, shaking her head as we reviewed the final FBI report together. "For 2 years, I thought you didn't want to talk to us, and I thought you were too angry to forgive me for the things Amanda said I'd said about you," I replied. "She kept us apart by making each of us believe the others didn't care." Dad, who had completed a gambling addiction treatment program and was attending weekly counseling sessions, looked up from the financial documents spread across the coffee table. "The hardest part for me is accepting how much she used my addiction against me. Every time I got a casino promotion, text, or email, I thought it was just bad luck that they found me at my weakest moments. She studied you, Dad. She knew your patterns and exploited them deliberately. That wasn't your fault." The recovery process had been complicated by the discovery that Amanda's crimes extended far beyond our family. The FBI investigation had uncovered a network of similar schemes targeting elderly homeowners across 5 states. Amanda had been working with real estate agents, medical professionals, and financial advisors to systematically defraud families who trusted them. Nicholas, Agent Chen, had told me during one of our final meetings, "Your sister was essentially running a criminal enterprise. The scope of planning and psychological manipulation involved here is unusual even for financial fraud cases." But today's family meeting wasn't about Amanda's crimes. It was about deciding how we wanted to rebuild our relationships and create a foundation for honest communication going forward. "I've been thinking about something," Mom said, setting down her coffee cup. "Nicholas, you protected us for 3 years without us knowing. You paid our mortgage, you kept us in our home, you preserved our dignity, but you also kept a huge secret from us. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have found a way to help openly. No, let me finish. What you did came from love, but it also came from the same pride that made Robert hide his gambling addiction. You didn't trust us to handle the truth about our financial situation, just like we didn't trust you to accept our problems without judging us." Dad nodded slowly. "She's right. We've all been protecting each other by keeping secrets, and look where it led us." Mom reached across the table and took both our hands. "I want us to make a promise to each other. No more secrets. No more trying to protect each other from difficult truths. If we're going to be a family, we need to trust each other with reality, even if it's uncomfortable or embarrassing. Especially then." Over the next several hours, we established new ground rules for our family relationships, monthly dinners together, with honest conversations about our lives, our struggles, and our needs. Dad would continue his gambling addiction counseling and attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings. Mom would see a therapist to help process the trauma of Amanda's manipulation and identity theft. I would be more open about my business and personal life, sharing my successes and failures instead of trying to appear perfect. "There's something else," I said, pulling out a thick folder I'd prepared with my lawyer. "I want to restructure the house trust to give you both more control over your own property. The new trust agreement I'd created would maintain their right to live in the house forever, but would also give them decision-making authority over any major changes or improvements. If they wanted to sell the house in the future, the proceeds would be split equally among all family members, creating an inheritance that could benefit everyone. And there's this. I added, handing Dad a separate document. I've established a family emergency fund. If any of us face financial difficulties in the future, we can access this money without shame or secrecy. Nicholas, you've already done so much. Dad, this isn't charity. This is family. When one of us struggles, we all struggle. When one of us succeeds, we all benefit. As we worked through the legal documents and financial arrangements, I could see my parents beginning to relax in ways I hadn't observed in years. The constant stress of hidden debt and family secrets was finally lifting, replaced by the comfortable weight of honest responsibility. "What about Amanda?" Mom asked as we concluded our meeting. "She's still our daughter, still your sister. How do we handle that relationship going forward?" It was the question I'd been dreading. Despite everything Amanda had done, despite the years of lies and manipulation, she was still family. But she was also someone who had deliberately harmed the people she was supposed to love. "I think we take it one day at a time," I said finally. "I'm not ready to forgive her, and I may never be. But I'm willing to leave the door open for the possibility that she might genuinely change." "I've been writing to her in prison," Dad admitted quietly. "She's agreed to participate in family therapy sessions if we're willing. Not to excuse what she did, but to understand how our family dynamics might have contributed to her anger." "Are you willing to do that?" Mom asked me. I thought about it for a long moment. The idea of sitting in a room with Amanda, listening to her explain her crimes as products of family dysfunction, made my stomach turn. But I also understood that healing might require confronting uncomfortable truths about how we'd all failed each other over the years. Ill-considerate. But only if she demonstrates genuine remorse and takes full responsibility for her choices. I won't participate in sessions where she blames her crimes on childhood disappointments. 6 months later, I stood in the backyard of our family home, watching my 10-year-old nephew Jake practice throwing a baseball against the same fence where I'd learned the game 30 years earlier. Amanda's children were living with us temporarily, while their mother served her prison sentence and their father completed job training programs to rebuild their lives. The kids had struggled with their mother's absence and the shame of her crimes, but they were beginning to adapt to the stability and honesty of living in our restored family environment. Jake was particularly drawn to Dad, who was teaching him about electrical work and taking him to Gamblers Anonymous meetings as a reminder of how family support could overcome addiction. "Uncle Nicholas, watch this," Jake called out, winding up for what he clearly thought would be an impressive pitch. The ball sailed over the fence into the neighbor's yard, just like mine used to do when I was his age. Dad laughed from his chair on the back porch, where he was reading a book on financial planning that had checked out from the library. "Some things never change," he called out. "Your Uncle Nicholas put at least 50 baseballs into Mrs. Peterson's garden before he learned to control his fastball. But I got better with practice," I replied, walking over to retrieve the ball. "And so will you, Jake." As I climbed the fence to get the baseball, I thought about how much our family had changed in the past year. We'd lost a daughter and sister to her own choices, but we'd gained something precious in return. The ability to love each other honestly, without the protection of lies that had ultimately made us more vulnerable to the people who wanted to hurt us. Mom called from the kitchen window that dinner was ready, and we all gathered around the same dining room table where I'd seen those foreclosure notices almost a year ago. But now the table was covered with homework assignments, library books, and the comfortable clutter of a family that was learning to share their lives openly. "Before we eat," Dad said, "I want us to share one thing we're grateful for today." It had become our family tradition, a small ritual that kept us connected to the present moment and each other. "I'm grateful that Amanda is getting the help she needs in prison," Mom said, "and that her children feel safe and loved here with us. I'm grateful that my counselor helped me understand the difference between family loyalty and enabling destructive behavior," Dad added. I'm grateful that we're all learning to trust each other with difficult truths, I said. Jake looked around the table seriously. I'm grateful that Grandpa Robert is teaching me how to fix electrical outlets, even though Mom said electricity was too dangerous for kids. We all laughed, but Jake had captured something important. Our family was learning to balance protection with empowerment, safety with growth, love with honest boundaries. After dinner, as I helped with dishes, Mom pulled me aside. Nicholas, I know you've been thinking about dating again. That woman Sarah from your office sounds lovely. How did you know about Sarah? Because we're not keeping secrets anymore. Remember? You mentioned her 3 times during dinner without realizing it. I smiled, caught in the act of being obvious about my feelings. Sarah is wonderful. She's smart, kind, and patient with my complicated family situation. When do we get to meet her? Are you sure you're ready for that? She knows everything about Amanda's crimes and the house situation. It's a lot for someone new to absorb. Nicholas, if she cares about you, she'll understand that families are complicated. Besides, we're not the same family we were a year ago. We're stronger now because we're honest. 2 weeks later, Sarah joined us for Sunday dinner, and I watched nervously as she interacted with my parents and nephew. But my worry was unnecessary. Sarah fit naturally into our family dynamic, asking thoughtful questions about Dad's recovery process and sharing stories about her own family's struggles with addiction. Your family has been through something extraordinary, she told me later as we walked around the neighborhood where I'd grown up. Not just the crimes, but the healing process. You've all chosen forgiveness over bitterness, growth over blame. It hasn't been easy. Some days I'm still angry about everything we lost because of Amanda's choices. But look at everything you've gained. Your relationship with your parents is stronger than ever. You're helping raise children who might have been lost to the system. You've learned to balance protection with trust. As we walked past the coffee shop where I'd first heard Amanda and Garrett planning their scheme, I realized that Sarah was right. The pain of betrayal and family destruction had been almost unbearable, but it had also created opportunities for growth and connection that might never have existed otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw a message from Amanda in prison. I know I have no right to ask this, but thank you for taking care of my children. They tell me about their new school and how much they love living with you and Mom and Dad. I hope someday I can earn the chance to be part of the family you've helped create. I showed the message to Sarah. How do you respond to something like that? Honestly, which seems to be your family's new approach to everything. That night, I wrote back to Amanda. Your children are loved and safe. When you're ready to take full responsibility for your choices without blaming others for your decisions, we can talk about how you might earn a place in their lives again. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was truth, offered with the possibility of redemption if Amanda was willing to do the hard work of genuine change. Standing in the backyard of the house I'd secretly protected for years, watching Sarah play catch with Jake while my parents laughed together on the porch, I understood something fundamental about family love. True protection doesn't come from keeping secrets or avoiding difficult truths. It comes from creating a foundation strong enough to bear the weight of honesty, flexible enough to accommodate growth, and deep enough to survive the storms that every family eventually faces. The house I'd bought to save my family had become something more than just a shelter from foreclosure. It had become the place where we learned that love without truth is just sentiment, but truth without love is just cruelty. The balance between those two forces was what made family possible. As the sun set over the Colorado Springs neighborhood where I'd grown up, I realized that I'd finally come home, not just to the house I owned, but to the family we'd chosen to become. Have you ever had to make difficult decisions to protect people you love, even when they might not understand your choices at the time? Family relationships can be incredibly complicated, especially when pride and shame create barriers to honest communication. I'd love to hear about your experiences with family challenges and how you've worked to build stronger, more honest relationships. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about real family struggles and triumphs. Don't forget to share this with someone who might benefit from hearing about how families can heal from even the most devastating betrayals. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our families is to insist on truth, even when it's painful. Until next time, keep fighting for the relationships that matter most.